Welcome to the Filmed Live Musicals podcast, a podcast about stage musicals that have been legally filmed and publicly distributed. The Filmed Live Musicals website contains information on nearly 200 musicals that have been captured live. Check it out at filmedlivemusicals.com. And now, on with the show. Welcome to episode 29 of the Filmed Live Musicals podcast. I'm your host, Luisa Lyons, and joining me today is Ethel Yap, who appeared in Pangdemonium's 20th anniversary production of Urinetown. Pangdemonium is a proudly Singaporean theatre company with a mission to tell stories on the stage which are challenging, inspiring, relevant, accessible, and above all, of the highest artistic entertainment and production values. Ethel is a fellow graduate of the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama and is a singer-songwriter who was recently nominated for 6 Youth Music Awards. Welcome, Ethel.
Hello! That was such a great intro, by the way.
Oh, wait,
As in, like the way, you're like, ooh, you're like so smooth, so cool. Very nice.
Thank you so much. So to start us off, Ethel, what made you fall in love with musical theatre?
Oh man, that's a question for the ages, isn't it? Well, I grew up in a very musical family. So my parents sing. They used to sing in choirs, and they still sing. And as a family, we sang together at home, at family gatherings, in church. So I kind of always grew up around music, and people used to like laugh and call us the Von Trapps and stuff like that because we would like line up in a row, like all of us, and sing together. And then when I was really young, there were touring performances of Les Mis and Phantom of the Opera, which came to Singapore. Probably an Australian cast, actually, because usually Australian casts do come by because we're nearby. And my parents brought my sisters and I to watch those shows. And I was just like blown away. I was like awestruck. Even as a child, I was very, very engaged in what I was watching, in the stories, in the music, definitely. And then they bought the soundtracks home on CD. So we would listen to them on repeat. And I think that's where it all started. Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. I'm picturing the family Von Yap.
I know, right? Oh my gosh. Actually, recently my mom found old albums of like my sisters and I like standing on the steps of a relative's house, and we were all like singing something really Von Trapp style, like in a row.
How many sisters do you have?
I have 2 older sisters.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
So you're the youngest of 3?
Yep.
So not quite at 7 children, but
No, thankfully not. I don't know. I think my mom would have gone mad.
And so we went to Central together in London.
Yes.
And we graduated in 2012, which feels like a lifetime ago.
Oh man.
And then you moved back to Singapore, and what happened after that?
I moved back to Singapore, and I kind of like straight away wanted to start acting, doing shows, being a professional actor. But as all professional actors know, it really takes time to get yourself rooted in an industry, no matter which country it is. So that was the case for me. So I came back, and, I didn't know anyone. I had very few connections to the theatre scene in Singapore. So I was like sending random emails to like the artistic directors of various companies here with my headshot, my CV, saying like, hi, I'm an actor I'm local, I just came back from my training in London. If you have any upcoming auditions, anything you would like to possibly see me for, I can come in, I can do a monologue, I can sing a song, I can read sides for you. So I was just like blasting random emails. And I was also going for like TV auditions as well, just sort of anything that would get me started. And the scene in Singapore is, certainly compared to New York and London, it is much smaller. So, knowing people is very important, because if not, you're kind of like, people are like, who are you? You're not part of our small club. So yeah, it took some time, but by some miraculous, in my opinion, circumstances, small doors started opening for me. I got to know some people who then introduced me to other people, and then slowly, some directors invited me to come for auditions and things like that. So that's kind of how I slowly found my way in. But it took some time. It took like 6 months to a year, which I'm not sure what it's like in other cities, but in Singapore, that's kind of like the average, like it's 6 months to a year, and definitely more for some people, unfortunately. Yeah, to sort of get like your first toe in the door.
That feels
Yeah.
quite quick. Like, as I
Oh,
think
okay.
the kind of like in London, I remember it was kind of like the rule was like 5 years. Like
Oh,
it
man.
took, I remember feeling like as someone, like you moving from overseas, it was like it kind of takes you 5 years to like feel established and like you said, get your foot
Yeah.
in the door. So I'm just trying to remember her name. The director of all the shows at Pangdemonium, Tracy.
Yes, Tracy Pang. Yeah.
Yes, Tracy Pang. Thank you. She also had worked in London and
Yes.
came back to Singapore or moved to Singapore. Is that right?
So Tracy is actually British, and yes, and she met Adrian, her husband. Okay, so basically, like, oh no, I don't know if I'm like the right person to give like a brief history of the Punks, but I'll just do my best. Adrian, Tracy, if you're listening, please don't. Yeah, okay, I love you guys. Anyway, so basically, like Adrian is a veteran actor in Singapore. He's incredibly well respected. He's got an immense body of work, and he was in the UK for some kind of training. It might not have been acting training. I think he might have been there for another degree actually. But anywho, he was in the UK for a number of years and acting there as well. And I think that's where they met. I'm pretty sure they met there in London. And they got married. They came back to Singapore, and Tracy was directing here, and Adrian was acting here, and they formed Pangdemonium in 2010, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, 2010. So after having directed and acted in collaboration with other companies in 2010, they started their own. So that's sort of like a brief history of the Punks.
And was Pangdemonium the first company that you worked with, or was it a different company in Singapore?
Well, actually, officially, the very first theatre company I worked with in Singapore was a children's theatre company, Theatre. I as in like iPhone I. Sadly, Theatre has folded, but many theatre actors in Singapore have worked with them. They were around for many years, for decades actually. So like lots of us have like great memories doing these wonderful shows for kids with Theatre. So that was actually my first theatre gig. Yeah.
First paycheck?
Yes. Well, first theatre paycheck. Actually, interestingly, my first official paycheck was a TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a small random TV show, but yeah, nonetheless.
You got to wear many hats as an actor, right? Got to be able to do it, be in every field.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward to 2016 when the English title is Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, and apologies for butchering the Chinese pronunciation, Liao Zhai Rocks.
Yes, well, that's perfect, actually.
Oh, yes. Can you tell us about the show, what it was?
Oh, wow. Okay, so Liao Zhai Rocks is like one of my favorite shows of all time. Like, it's one of the favorite shows that I've ever worked on. And it's got such a special place in my heart because it was kind of like the first Chinese theatre production where it is the first Chinese theatre production that I had a speaking role in. So I worked with this company. So I'll probably be mentioning this company quite a lot because I've worked with them like many times. And I'm very close to them. They're like family to me. So this company is called the Theatre Practice. So I'll just refer to them as TTP for short, because that's how everyone in Singapore refers to them. So I did a show with TTP in 2014, which was like a Chinese jukebox musical. And the songs were written by a local, a Singaporean songwriter who is quite celebrated here. So that was the very first show I did with them. I was in the ensemble and I only sang. I didn't have any speaking lines at all. But I just had such a great time doing that show and with them. And then the second show I did with them was Liao Zhai Rocks. And it was really crazy because they called me into audition for one of the lead roles. So I was like, okay, I'll just go for it. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna get it because my Mandarin is terrible. It is so bad. Like, it's cringe. It's like cringe bad. And I was at a point where like the only thing I could do was pretty much introduce myself, and I couldn't really say anything else. And that's the state of my Mandarin when I went to audition for Liao Zhai. But I did my best, and amazingly they gave me the role, which is kind of like the second lead female role in the show. Yeah, so I was like bowled over, but instantly was like incredibly intimidated because I was like, oh my gosh, my language skills are just not up to par, because it isn't just any like normal Chinese show. It's a period piece. I know. So the Chinese used in Liao Zhai is actually classical Mandarin. So it was really difficult. I mean, it was like the learning curve was insane.
It's like doing Shakespeare if English is your second language, or like you just you can say hi, how are you in English, and now please do Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, yes. So that's like the perfect analogy. I mean, it's kind of like it was modernized somewhat. So okay, maybe not like Shakespeare, but like maybe like Jane Austen-y kind of like English,
Okay.
So still tough. So wow, like I hit the ground running. Like they really put me to work, but they were great. They inspired a lot of confidence that I didn't have in myself, and they also helped. So they gave me like a language coach, and we had like speech sessions that were separate from the rehearsals, and like every step of the way I just felt really, really supported. I didn't feel like I was thrown in the deep end at all, and it helped me grow. So because of that experience, my Mandarin improved a lot, and it became a lot better than what it was originally. So that was wonderful. But this show is also really special because, as I mentioned, it's adapted from a classical Chinese text. But it's really quirky and unique because it's, stories from an old classical Chinese text, but set to like rock music. And when you see that on paper, it shouldn't work. But it really does. It really does. I mean, it's kind of like Hamilton, right? Like people are like, what? The founding fathers with rap music, but it works, and like Liao Zhai is like that. So it was just like, it was a crazy time because I was so stressed, working on the language, but at the same time I was having so much fun with the show. The cast was amazing. I felt our choreography was amazing. I mean, for Singapore, I think that the choreography on the show was really like really high level. So I mean, there were just so many things about the show that I really loved. The whole process, the rehearsal process was really unique because TTP used to be in a space that didn't have air conditioning. And like
Singapore exists in Singapore.
I know Singapore's a tropical country, right?
Isn't that illegal to not have AC?
It ought to be, but it's not. So because they used their rehearsal space used to be this really old building in Singapore, which used to be like a really old school building, and then the school moved out, but the building was still there, and then the government gave that building to arts groups to use as their spaces, their offices, their rehearsal studios and stuff. So TDP was in that space for 30 years. Very sadly, they got chased out because like the government was like, oh, now we're going to take this building back and give it to other people. Yeah, that's a whole other story about Singapore and the art. But anywho's, so they were in this old space, and their rehearsal room, the biggest rehearsal hall, didn't have air conditioning. So we were like doing these crazy scenes, like people like dancing their hearts out, like full scale like choreo in like thick costumes, because the show is set in ancient China and no aircon, and everyone's just like sweating their lives out. But there's something about that experience that really bonds everyone.
Bonding through
Yeah.
adversity.
Totally. But it was like fun adversity. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
I just felt everyone was having a great time. Um, even though it was a tough rehearsal process. So it was just like all these things combined that made that production so special for me. And yeah, like, I mean, so many things, like I felt like I really grew so much because the challenges were so immense. And the bar was so high. But like I felt that, hey, I surprised myself, I rose to the occasion. I gained a lot of confidence and I grew a lot along the way. So yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, that's why this show is like so special to me.
So I'm curious about the language portion. Did you grow up speaking Chinese at home, or is it something you learn at school?
So even though ethnically I am Chinese, but my family speaks English, and that's kind of like a heritage of, the British colonial legacy that Singapore has inherited. So in Singapore, I will speak only for Chinese people in Singapore, because the situation may be different for Malay and Indian people. But for Chinese people in Singapore, if you're we're like millennials, right? So like our parents are boomers. So for like boomer Chinese Singaporeans, what happened was that they either went to English medium schools or Chinese medium schools, because at the time that the education system was like that. And if you went to English medium schools, then it would be likely that at home you'd speak English with your own kids. But if you went to Chinese medium schools, then it'd be likely that you'd speak Mandarin at home, or some form of Chinese dialect. And my parents went to English schools, so we just ended up speaking English at home. But there are a good many people who speak Chinese at home with their folks, and it's their first language as well. But in school, officially, since the 80s, it's been like all English medium schools, and Chinese is a language subject that you take as one of like many languages. Yeah.
Is a medium school high school?
Oh, sorry. By medium, I mean like it's the language of instruction.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And as an actor, when you're like learning your text in another language, do you need to translate the whole script so you understand it in English? Or are you thinking bilingually as you're reading the script?
So definitely when I first approached the script, I was thinking, I mean, it was internally like my monologue was completely English. so as I made sure, because I knew like, how big the challenge was. So I made sure to request the script like way ahead of time, so I could start working on it even before we started rehearsals. And what I did first and foremost was like, I read through every line, and like every word that I could not read, I went to look it up in the dictionary, write down how to pronounce it, write down what it means, and then look at it in context of the whole sentence, and then sort of like slowly work through the entire script that way. So there were like tons of English notes on my script. And also, I mean, as well as when we started rehearsing, and you be getting directions from the director, and you're like thinking about your character's through line and everything, like all my notes were in English. So yeah, that was just kind of, I mean, it was for me the most efficient way to approach it. But as we went along, and also through the years, as I've continued to work with TTP and I've done more Chinese shows, then I think it got to a point where it got a bit more bilingual, simply because I was just using the language so much more, and I was around Chinese speaking people so much more. So it kind of evolved into that, which was great. Like, yeah.
Oh, what a cool skill to have picked up and like to connect you with your cultural heritage as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. I think that was one very big thing for me as well, which was that um yeah, like it was only when I went through the whole process of rehearsing for Liao Zhai that I realized like actually how disconnected I was from my Chinese heritage. And even though, it was kind of like really late, but it was nice to be able to like start to reconnect in these ways, which I never would have anticipated.
Oh, that's really beautiful. That like to me is like the best thing about theater and music, like that it has that power to do that.
Yeah.
So Liao Zhai Rocks was filmed during its run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's cool about Jian Hong? Okay, so Jian Hong is the name of the director. So what's cool about her is that she has a background in directing films, actually, as well. Amongst other things, like she's done so much, like such a like her the diversity of her work is really really interesting. But she did direct some films earlier in her career as well. So from what I observed, she tried to record the musical in as filmic a way as possible, I think, while like not interrupting the theatrical process. So by that I mean that to us, the cast, it was just like an archival recording. I mean, what like the only thing we noticed was that one of the days in the run, okay, we see like cameras there and like that's it. But for her, I think she was sort of like calling like okay, different cameras, okay, and then now like switch to the other camera, okay, and then now like back to the so I think like she was like doing that. And even though to us it seemed like a regular archival, but I think for her it was a lot more intentional in the way she tried to like put the whole thing together. Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool. I would love to chat with her some more about her
Mm.
process because I think having directors who work in both mediums is rare
Yeah.
and also very exciting because there are so many possibilities. So it was filmed in 2016, is that right?
Yes, 2016.
And then was it released at that time or was it kind of held in the archives until 2020?
Yeah, it was held in the archives until
Huh.
until the pandemic hit. And
Wow.
actually that's like the standard in Singapore, is that no one ever gets to see archival like other than the artistic director of the company, basically, like no, or like some admin personnel who's like, I don't know, doing some research for something. But yeah, no one ever gets to watch the archival, not the cast, not the crew, like no one.
Mm.
I think there's a fear that if somehow the files get out or they get leaked, then people aren't going to buy tickets. They're just not going to show up in person.
Mm.
And I mean, to be fair, I think that fear is very valid for Singapore because our scene is small in that way. And every ticket matters. Every ticket sold really does matter to the company that's staging the show. We don't take any ticket sales for granted whatsoever. And I mean, like, even for shows that we consider to be really big shows, like big musicals, large scale productions, the most they will run in a theater is like 4 weeks. So like every ticket really matters. So I think that's
Mm.
why companies are so protective even over archival material. Yeah.
Interesting. So, when it was released in 2020, were
Hmm.
there any negotiations with you as an actor for like extra compensation or anything like that?
Actually, no, not at all. Yeah, I think to be fair, I'm pretty sure that like contractually, uh okay, so here's the thing, right? Like in Singapore, Singapore actors have this like terrible thing that like a lot of us don't really read our contracts like very well. We just like sign the thing because we're like, oh, we need the money. So we're just like, please just give me the show. So so I'm pretty sure that like contractually the company's allowed to do that. Yeah, but no, I mean, in short, no.
So in the US, like equity shows have really strict rules around filming, and
Mm,
there's rule like to even film the show there, it's really strict. And then releasing it, there's like lots of rules involved, like where you can stream it, who can watch it,
wow.
what platforms you can use, and then how everybody is compensated. And so I'm
Mm.
curious, how do you feel as an actor? Like, it's great that your work is out there, but also on the flip side, you're not receiving compensation for it. So how do you feel about that model? Like, what would you like to see changed, or what would, are you okay with this model? Do you want it to be different? Is there a
Mm.
union kind of equivalent in Singapore?
Wow, that's such a great question. Because like, okay, so to begin, wow, okay, it's a great question because the situation in Singapore, like the way the scene is structured, uh, is I think very very different from how things go on in New York and in London, and I suppose in other European cities. So to begin with, there is like no union thing at all here. Like there really isn't. And actors for many years have been trying to get together and like form some kind of union, and to be fair, like I think that more senior actors have in the past tried to put associations together, but I think the kind of negotiating power that they had in the past was very very limited, and I think a lot of them felt like it's not really going anywhere. So I think those efforts kind of fizzle out over time. So right now the situation in Singapore is that you kind of have to take care of yourself. Yeah, which is hard. It really is hard. So from every like and that covers everything from like negotiating your pay
Mm.
to asking for compensation if you get injured on set, for example. You kind of have to take care of yourself. So that's tough. And in terms of like specifically to answer your this specific question about getting compensation when a show that you appear in surfaces somewhere again, is streamed, is rebroadcasted, whatever, or even on TV. Like I think a lot of us don't even realize that that's something we could negotiate for, that's something we could ask about,
Mm.
because it's just not like on our radar, that
Yeah.
that's even possible. Because like the system is just not structured in a way that makes it feel that that's even available to us. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm curious.
Mm.
I just watched a documentary called The Show Must Go On,
Mm-hmm.
directed by Sammy Canold, who's a director here in the US. And she went to South Korea at the beginning of the pandemic and followed the casts of Cats and The Phantom of the Opera in
Mm.
Seoul,
Yeah.
who remained open during the early part
Mm-hmm.
of the pandemic. And they talked in the documentary about how South Korea has this culture of we act for the community. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not like the US, which is like every man for himself. And there's this very much community minded culture. And so I'm
Mm.
curious, does that also exist in Singapore? And it's like the unions haven't been as necessary because like companies will take care of you, or am I overgeneralizing?
I think that's a really like interesting question. So, I think just to give a bit of context, unions in Singapore do exist, but they exist for like more blue collar labor type of work. So, like bus drivers have a union in Singapore. They actually even went on a strike once. It wasn't very successful, but they did. So just to give an example, and we have this sort of like in Singapore it's called the NTUC. It's the National Trade Union Congress, something like that. Anyway, it's basically like a gathering of all the various unions in Singapore. But But for like people in the arts, like actors, performers, there isn't one. Yeah, I don't know if it's because people feel like actors don't need a union, but we do. Okay, anywho's, I suppose like the word union is just sort of associated with very specific kinds of jobs in Singapore, of which if you're a performer, people don't really associate that with needing to be in a union. Um, so so that's kind of like one issue. Another issue is that yes, I would say similar to Korea, we definitely are a very community-minded society, but I would say specifically for Singapore, we're not just community minded, but we're actually very like government controlled, very top down. So nothing in Singapore happens without government consent. And if it does, it's happening in secret, like because I think Singapore is quite famous for being a very like nanny state where the government really controls like every single aspect of our lives. But on the flip side, they they take good care of us, like our country is clean, our country is safe, but we trade all those things in for like control. So similarly in the art scene, there's been like a decades long tension between artists and the government, because like artists are always getting their work censored, for example, and so there's that tussle, right? There's that tension, but at the same time, arts groups receive funding from the government that keep them going, so it's kind of like we're like, we can't bite the hand that feeds us, but at the same time, they're just like, they're co-opting us, so there's like a lot of that. Yeah, and I think that being an actor in Singapore and not having a union, kind of like when you kind of step back and you see that these are the larger forces at play, it, sadly that's the case for us. So in terms of yeah, like not having sort of that wider structural support that a union would offer, yes, in lieu of that, you fall back on either taking care of yourself or individuals or groups within the community take care of you. So for example, like what I said, when I was doing Liao Zhai, I mean, I mentioned that I felt very taken care of, because yeah, like they knew I was, for example, they knew I was struggling with my language. So they gave me a language coach, things like that. Like, so that's what we fall back on, like personal relationships, because a lot of us, because the industry is quite small, so many of us become really good friends, and we support each other that way on a personal level. Yeah, so I mean, just things like that, like it becomes, the support and the care kind of becomes this sort of rather informal thing, which is both good and bad. Yeah, sometimes it gets complicated because of that as well.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
becomes
because
like
of
this,
yeah.
the internal politics become
Mm-hmm.
very magnified when it's kind of a small world
Yep.
like that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. Yeah.
Very much understand that. Which makes me want to jump ahead to Urinetown, because in that context, Urinetown is a really interesting show. Like
Mm.
it talks about all of those issues like government control and
Mm-hmm.
are we taking care of our citizens, and who gets left out when that model is in place. So let's
Yeah.
jump ahead to Urinetown. How did you become to be involved with Pangdemonium's Urinetown?
So I had the really awesome privilege of working with Pangdemonium a few years before. So in 2014, I think I auditioned for a play that they staged. And so I auditioned, I got the part, and it's this play called Tribes by this playwright called Nina Raine, and it's actually, I think it's a British play. Yes, yes. So Nina Raine is a British playwright, and I think Tracy and Adrian had seen the play when they made one of their trips to London. And they really loved the script, so they decided to stage it in Singapore. So they got the rights for it and everything. And yeah, so I was part of the show. And then so that was the first time I worked with them. It was like an amazing experience. It was a wonderful show. And then like fast forward to like 2019, they're like, hey, we're doing Urinetown. so then they invited me to be part of the show, and I had also in between done like a musical-ish thing for them. It's a long story, so I won't get into it, but suffice to say, I did like a musical-ish thing for them, like in between those two productions, which made them want to cast me for Urinetown. So, which was awesome. So then I got into Urinetown, and then we did the show in 2019. So that's kind of like how I started working with them. Yeah.
And I love the slight change that it's set in the futuristic, most expensive city in the world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Nice little adaptation for Singapore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's like, I don't know, man. Like I don't know if it's something we should brag about or be ashamed of. Like I really, it's awkward.
Sydney's fighting for your title. Don't worry.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Hot on your heels. And what was the process of being, how long was the run, and what was the process of being involved in that show?
So the run was also about 3 to 4 weeks long, which yeah, as I mentioned, is kind of like as long as it gets in Singapore for a local production. I mean, touring productions, they come, they stay for months, but that's because the money comes from elsewhere. But for local productions, it's not likely that it will go beyond 4 weeks. So I think we did like 3.5, I think. Yeah, thereabouts, which is pretty standard for like a big musical here. What was the process like? Oh, it was awesome. I mean, it was really hard work. Like, I mean, it's such a physical show, especially if you're one of the poor, which I was. Oh my gosh,
life is always hard for the poor.
Oh, dude, tell me about it. It's like, whoa, really, like, yeah, basically the whole of Act 2, you're just like dancing nonstop. It's like non-stop, but it was fun. And also I felt like I was probably in the best shape of my life doing that show. Like, I mean, like, genuinely, it was so funny because when the casting results came out, and we were informed that we had been casted, whoever got into the cast, our choreographer was like, all of you better start working out because it's gonna be a hard show. Yeah, he was like, I tell you all in advance, it's gonna be like really physical, so you have to be fit. So I was like, oh my gosh. So like, I actually started like trying to work out more regularly, in like for the show. So I started working out more regularly like a few months before the show, and then by the time that, it got around to the show, I was like, yeah, I'm in a good place. So it was physically tough, vocally also, like, whoa. I mean, it's like the lethal combination of like the crazy high like soprano parts and like non-stop dancing. But it was a great challenge, and I think it's so funny. Like, now that I've been working in this industry for like more than for like 8 years. Wait, like, yeah, 8 years. Yeah, I the last year didn't really count because time stood still. But for about 8 years, I think that the shows that I look back the most fondly on are the ones where the challenges were immense, and so I had to grow and I had to like meet those challenges head on, and definitely Urinetown was one of them because it was such a physical show. And I think, just to give some perspective, like in Singapore, we don't really do a lot of dancey musicals because not a lot of actors have dance training. So it is more common to find actors who are very strong actors and singers, but not very strong dancers. And we do have some actors who are like genuine triple threats, but very few. Yeah, very few. And those that are genuine triple threats they're the ones who are working all the time, because they can do everything. But most of us are strong actors and singers and not so great dancers. So usually when on the off occasion that a company decides to stage a more dancey musical, what will happen is that they'll get like dancers who don't really sing to come and do like the heavy dancing, and then the lead roles will be people who act and sing more. So,
which is kind of how it used to work in New York. You'd have the dance corps, and the leads would sing, and then the dancers would come in and do the dancing.
Mm-hmm. But now it's just like everyone is insanely amazing, and
yes,
and all of them are aliens, basically.
You are exactly right. I'm having flashbacks to running around the rooms at Central with Thea Barnes and like being drilled and being told like, if you're not show fit.
Oh, so bad. Yeah, but yeah. No, I so feel you. So yeah, so I mean, I've always, felt that I was one of those people that was not a very good dancer. So yeah, so for Urinetown, we were like, okay, man, we gotta rise to the occasion,
And you certainly did. What's the number at the end of Act 1? It's a hard, cold.
The police song.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just cracked up. The costumes are so fantastic.
I know,
and
right?
It's so effective. And I'm surprised to learn that most of the cast are not dancers. Yeah.
I think like many of us would hesitate to say that we're like dancers. So like most of us would be like, we're actors who move. Like a lot of us would say that we're like singer actors who move. And then only like a few would be like, yes, I can do all three, like confidently. So I mean, our choreographer really like whipped us into shape. But I was glad for it. I mean, I think I a while back I told myself that I have to at least do like one dancey musical, like just one. So like if Urinetown is my only one, I'm like pretty glad that that was it. Yeah.
And similar to Liao Zhai Rocks, was it filmed for archival purposes?
Yes. I mean, I believe it was. I think yes. I think so. Yeah.
So you, as actors, you weren't like you weren't really aware of the cameras, or it wasn't like a special performance for the cameras or anything like that?
Yeah, no. I think it was recorded during an actual show. I mean, some companies choose to record their archival during a full dress run. Then you can kind of, I don't know, like bring the camera closer and things like that. You can put them in the seats. But I'm pretty sure for Urinetown, it was during an actual show. So it would, be like pretty far back and things like that. Yeah.
But the editing is so good. Like it feels, you're able to see the show and they've edited it with close-ups and different camera angles. So it's been really beautifully done. It doesn't, again, the way technology has changed and the digital cameras make it so much easier now that it doesn't feel like just sticking a camera up the back and having the one-shot archival recording. It feels more dynamic than that.
Yeah. I think, I've been surprised because during the pandemic when we were all in lockdown, and then even like a lot of Singapore companies started putting their work online. So companies that do like plays as well, they were putting their stuff online, and I was like, wow, like quality of this is like really good.
Yeah, and I'm so glad it was made available. I'm really sad I missed Liao Zhai Rocks. I like want to write to the company and be like, can I watch it, please? And I'll add it to the database as well. But being able to see Urinetown was delightful, and being able to see you work finally after all these years, being able to watch you from afar was so wonderful.
Oh, thank you. I don't know. It's so like funny because I mean, just like a random thing about reconnecting with like people from Central. Like I think it's so, I don't know, it's like so special. I really enjoy reconnecting with people from Central, and I spent some time in London in 2019, and I saw David in Motown the musical, and he was incredible. He was Smokey Robinson. He was so good. Like every time he came out, I was like,
And it's funny, David Albury, British actor, who he was in a musical, Only the Brave, which was about the D-Day landings, based on true stories of the D-Day landings, and that was filmed live at the Wales Millennium Centre and is available online. So I was able to connect with him through that too, and hopefully he will be coming on the podcast as well.
Yes, I hope so. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
Oh, so there was another musical that you're in that has been filmed, Lao Zhou.
Lao
Did I say
Jiu.
that?
Yep.
Joe. Oh, so close.
Jiu.
Which translates to number 9 in English.
Yes.
And so can you tell us about what that show is about?
Lao Jiu is a show that has a really long history in Singapore. It is like one of our like famous shows because it was written by Kuo Pao Kun. Okay, so here's where I have to kind of like go into a bit of history as well. So Jian Hong, who is the artistic director of the Theatre Practice and who directed me in Liao Zhai and Lao Jiu, she is the daughter of Kuo Pao Kun, who wrote Lao Jiu originally as a play. And she basically when Kuo Pao Kun passed away, she took over the running of the company. Well, I think she had already, if I'm not wrong, I think she had already taken over the running of TTP even prior to his passing. Yeah, but anywho's, Kuo Pao Kun is like I don't know, man. He's like OG. He's like Singapore theatre's OG, like the OG. Like he's the OG like playwright, he's the OG like director, he's the OG like activist, you know. He was like a political prisoner in Singapore for like a few years. Yeah, because of his work and yeah, it's like whoo, a lot of history there. But he is immensely respected and he has left a huge legacy in our theatre scene. And he wrote Lao Jiu originally as a play, and then it's, you know, of course been performed many times, adapted many times, done in different languages, and then became a musical as well. So when I finally performed in it, it was like the, I don't know, like nth iteration of the show. Yeah, and this time in a musical form. So it was quite like cool to sort of just be one of many people who have stepped into the legacy of this show and like stepped into the legacy of Kuo Pao Kun himself. And I mean, like, if you're a performer in Singapore, you know who he is and you know his work, and you know this play as well. So yeah, so it's quite cool because it's so funny. It's kind of like that like Hamlet thing where like every actor takes on the mantle. You know what I mean? Like every actor who
Yeah.
performs Hamlet is like, I'm the next Hamlet, and like Batman is like everyone's like, I'm the next Batman. So it's kind of like I'm in Lao Jiu. Oh, you're in Lao Jiu. Oh, I was in Lao Jiu in the 70s. Oh, I was in Lao Jiu in the 80s. Oh, sorry. It started in the
Wow.
80s because it was written in the 80s. So it's like, oh, I was in this version of Lao Jiu, and I was in that version of Lao Jiu, and I was acting as this, and I was acting as that character, and hey, we were acting as the same character, but we're like a generation apart, So it's that kind of show.
What is the
Yeah.
story about?
So the story is, firstly, it's set in the 80s, in Singapore in the 80s, in a family that has 8 girls, and the number 9 is a boy. So he's a very precious boy, because in Chinese culture, boys are favored over girls, and this family in particular is a poor family. The parents are uneducated, and the dad used to be like a gangster, like some secret society member, but he's kind of like made good, but he's uneducated, and the mom is like this really like sweet housewife, but she's uneducated as well, and they have like 8 girls. And so the parents feel like they're cursed, and like they keep trying for a boy but they keep having a girl, and like finally they have a boy, and the whole family pools like all their resources to send this boy to school. And he's smart, and he does well in school, and he like gets good grades, and so the whole family's hopes are pinned on him. But he wants to quit school and learn puppetry because he loves puppetry, the traditional Chinese puppetry. Yeah, so it's like this huge like tension, like should he, like, and when you, as an audience member, when you step into the story, it's at this turning point where the number 9, the boy, he's supposed to go for this big exam that will determine whether or not he wins a scholarship for university, and and so like you feel the tension, like he's like, oh, I don't want to study anymore, I want to be like a puppet master, I want to go and train with my master, and I want to be like his apprentice. But then the family's like, how can you do this to us, we've invested everything in you, you're the only one who has gone to school, things like that. So it's very Asian in that way. But it's something that so many Singaporeans can relate to. Yeah, it's very, very relatable, which I think is why it has been performed so many times. And, so many people see themselves in that role. And definitely for so many artists in Singapore, like we have gone through that exact same struggle,
Oh, what a powerful story. And that was also filmed archivally and then released during the pandemic. I want to see it. Release it again, please, TTP.
Yeah, please. I know it was fun, and the role I had in it was really interesting because I was this somewhat random but not really random character. So in the version I was acting in, I'm kind of like Lao Jiu's love interest, but not really, because like it never really goes anywhere. But like basically my character is like a foil to his, because I'm another like straight A student who ends up following that path. Like I go for the exam, I get the scholarship and everything. And so like our paths cross for like a moment, and then he considers whether he should come with me and we should like, go study together, go to university together, that kind of thing. But then he chooses a different path. Like he actually decides to forgo the exam and to study puppetry and, etc. So
follow his heart and his passion. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Oh, Ethel, I could talk to you for hours about all of this, but we're running a little short on time. So I have a series of questions that I ask all my guests. To start off with, what is your favorite musical?
Oh, that's so hard. Does everyone say it's really hard to choose? Yes. Oh, man. Okay, so this may not be definitive, but for now, I think it's the last 5 years. Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to see you in that. Do you have a favorite filmed live musical?
Do I have a favorite film live musical? That's a very good question. The problem is, I'm not sure if I've seen very many. Yeah, is that weird? I don't know. Like I don't know. It's really hard to. Yeah, can I pass?
Of course, absolutely. So a filmed live musical, it's not exactly live theater, and it's not exactly a film. So what should we call it?
Ooh.
That's usually how most people also respond.
Oh man, these questions are like really hard. I thought they were gonna be like rapid fire, like bam, bam, bam. But like I'm like hesitating at each one. I'm so sorry.
It's not a problem. They're life's big questions.
A movical.
Oh, I like that. A movical. Where do you stand on bootlegs?
Ooh. If it's staged by one of those big machine type companies, I say yay. But if it's a small indie company, I say nay. Yeah. Because the small indies need the profit, man. They need it. But like Cameron McIntosh is already rich enough. So he does not need my extra dollars. Yeah.
Fair. What shows do you wish had been filmed?
Oh. Is it very terrible to say my own shows?
Not at all.
Is it very terrible to say that? Okay. Because as I mentioned earlier, companies in Singapore are incredibly protective over their archivals. And so if you have a loved one who is not able to watch your show, they will never be able to see it. And it's very sad. So for that reason, I would say my own shows, like, I mean, stuff that I've appeared in.
Yeah,
Just for
absolutely.
you know what I mean? Just for like uncles and aunties and like loved ones who were not able to catch it live. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that answer. What would you like to see filmed in the future?
As in, would I like to see? What? Sorry, can you be a bit more specific?
Oh, sure. What stage musicals would you like to see filmed in the future?
As in stage musicals that are currently running?
Or, what should we be filming in the future for stage musicals?
Okay, so I've been hearing a lot about like Hadestown. Is that what it's called? Hadestown?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like a show like that would never come to Singapore, you know? So yeah, like I would love to see that. Like, yes.
I second that. I have seen it and it is gorgeous, and
nice.
I hope they do a capture of it. It's such a great show, and it deserves a wide audience that goes beyond Broadway.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And finally, where can we find you and your work online?
Oh, okay. So definitely my Spotify for my original music.
Which is gorgeous. Everyone should go check that out.
Aw, thank you. Yes, so just type in my name, Ethel Yap. Depending on where in the world you are, you might see a bunch of children's Chinese songs. But that's also me. The English stuff is there as well. Yes. So that's for my original music. For my theatre stuff, well, so right now I'm taking a break to be a mummy, but hopefully we'll return to the stage soon. And I post all my updates on my Instagram and my Facebook page. Yeah.
Great. And we'll have links to all of that in the show notes.
Yay!
Wonderful. Ethel, thank you so much for your time today. It has been a delight to catch up with you and chat with you.
Thank you so much. It's been so great talking to you. Yeah, it's been a wonderful time. Thank you.
Filmed Live Musicals makes musical theatre more accessible, brings joy, and creates a sense of connection for audiences around the world. With thanks to patrons Josh Brandon, Elliot Charles, Rachel Esteban, Mercedes Esteban Lyons, James T. Lane, Al Monaco, David Negrin, Jesse Rabinowitz and Brenda Goodman, David and Catherine Rabinowitz, and Beck Twist for being a part of spreading the love of musical theatre. If you would like to join, you can do so by becoming a Filmed Live Musicals patron. For as little as $3 a month, you'll receive early access to the Filmed Live Musicals podcast, early access to site content, and a weekly newsletter with info on upcoming streams. Visit patreon.com/musicalsonscreen to learn more. You can also leave a review on Apple Podcasts and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thanks for listening.